Hello and welcome back to sunny Caldwell, Ohio, here at the Apex Gaming home store, where we are bringing you coverage of today's $5,000 Apex Invitational Qualifier featuring the modern format. We are entering round 3 of 7 of our Swiss rounds before the cut to the top 8. So things are starting to shape up. We're starting to see what decks are doing well, what decks aren't doing so well. And I got to say, Corey, this modern format looking very diverse, very healthy right now.
It looks awesome. Modern has looked really good, and I hate to even say it since they banned Breach. You know, maybe...
Don't remind me.
Maybe they were right. I know this is hard to hear for both of us and hard to say for both of us, but...
You got to give me a warning before you mention that again.
Okay, sorry.
Still, the wounds are still open.
Let me get that
still fresh.
knife out of your back here. I'll try not to stab it in there for the rest of the broadcast. But yeah, since the ban of Breach, the format has just really opened up and really looked quite good. And I think Final Fantasy, as we're seeing from a lot of these lists, and it's of course still week 1, so people are peppering in anything that seems fun. But it seems like a healthy addition to the format. I think Vivi was the only card that maybe it could be too much, but it doesn't even seem crazy to me.
We're seeing a few other cards. So we're going to take a look right now at our metagame breakdown for the day. If Director Taryn can pop that up on the screen. No surprise here, Boros Energy at the top, but is there anything down below that is drawing your eye, Corey?
You know, I think the Belcher numbers are actually a little low. I think that deck is looking really solid right now. I was expecting to see a bunch of Grixis Control after Corey Burkhart did well at the Spotlight. Everyone's been playing that online. So that's kind of the bigger surprise to me. But other than that, not really. I mean, Amulet with only 2 copies is probably pretty wild. That still seems like either for sure a tier 1 deck or S tier. You know, there are certain times when Amulet just looks absolutely undeniable as far as other decks. So that's the biggest surprise to me is that little amount of Amulet here.
Looks to me like a lot of players deciding to play really fair Magic.
Yeah.
Orzhov Ketramos, Dimir Murktide, Affinity, Domain, Is It Prowess, Boros Energy, the top 6 decks, not a single combo deck among them.
Yeah, and whenever you have a metagame where it's less than 20% as your top deck, you know you got a good one. So, I mean, this is ideal. This is amazing for players, amazing for casters, and amazing for you at home watching new and exciting decks every single round.
Okay, so as far as what we are going to get to this round, we do have a combo deck among our players in the first feature match. James Mangus, fresh off a top 8 yesterday, trying to make it back-to-back, is playing Esper Goryo.
Okay.
He's going to be up against Dean Forshee, who's playing a very interesting Mardu Ketramos build featuring several new cards from Final Fantasy. 2 copies of Joshua Phoenix's Dominant. Going to try to discard some Phlages on the red splash. Also has some Rogavins to get himself some additional mana early. In terms of Final Fantasy, has a Squall Seed Mercenary in the main deck. And then even in the sideboard, a couple copies of Fire Magic. So really dipping into the new set.
Oh, yeah.
But
someone's a Final Fantasy fan.
Yeah. This is a very cool deck. Similar, core that we see in the Orzhov decks as Philia, Overlord of the Belmurk, Ketramos, Emperor of Bones, Solitude. But instead of splashing blue like some players do for Psychic Frog or just staying Orzhov, splashing these red cards, borrowing a little bit from the Boros deck, says, I want some Rogavins, I want some fast mana, I want some Phlages, which are great cards to mill over with Overlord.
Yeah, and honestly, Joshua's Phoenix Dominant here actually looks pretty sweet as well, and I think the most important aspect of this card is the 4 toughness. You know, doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, Galvanic Discharge is a little extra work to be able to kill it, and then it kind of does its best Fable of the Mirror Breaker impression on the front side, and then being able to exile it and do some, Lightning Helix-esque damage, and then it flips right back. This card can do some serious things, especially unchecked in the late game, so yeah, it could be really good.
Yeah, now, in this matchup in particular against the Esper Goryo's deck...
Not as many good things.
Yeah. I think the Rogavin is the real winner.
Yes, yeah.
If he can get a Rogavin early, potentially keep his opponent off balance with some removal. He does have a couple of copies of Dreams of Steel and Oil. That's going to be a nice one.
Yeah, I think, as you're saying that, the biggest difference from this Ketramos list and, maybe our traditional ones is they main deck Relics, and that gets some nice collateral damage to the Goryo's decks. not going to be the case here. Decides to play like cards like Prismatic Ending instead. So Dean's deck is very much more focused towards the aggressive decks, and now you're running up against Goryos. So it could be a bit of a problem with the changes that Dean has made.
Okay, well, we're going to see how this Mardu deck fares in the Esper Goryo's matchup. Our players are ready in the feature match area, so let's head on down there and kick off round 3 of Swiss here at the Apex Invitational Qualifier. Dean Forshee on your right kicks things off with a Bloodstained Mire. Gonna crack that one. Looks like he's going to 17, getting a shock land of some variety.
For a certain 2/1 Ragavan style creature, I would imagine.
It's got to be either Ragavan or Dreams of Steel and Oil.
Yep. And both. Pretty good. I'm going to lean towards Ragavan now. That would be my expert opinion here. And that being said, you know, James doesn't have a ton of clean ways to deal with this. We have the 3 Prismatic Endings, which look great, and then just Solitude. But if you have to 2-for-1 yourself against Ragavan, you don't feel as good. But James will for sure do it.
But what James does have is a very, very fresh shirt there. The Floral Matter popping on screen right
now. Absolutely. James went pretty deep in our tournament yesterday as well, right?
Yeah, made the top 8.
Yeah, that's right.
Really racking up those points, trying to get himself not only into the Invitational in November, but get himself a bye, as our top 8 leaderboard players will earn.
Yeah, he played quite well, too. You know, every time we played, he played very, you know, decisive, really clean Magic. So I was pretty impressed with James.
He's a mainstay here on the Apex series, so this is not his first rodeo.
Looks like he's a mainstay in Hawaii as well with that fantastic shirt.
And no 2-drop for Dean Forshee after the Ragavan gets exiled by a Solitude, which was evoked by pitching a Faithful Mending from Mangus.
Yeah, a card we actually don't see a ton of in these decks anymore. You know, they kind of cut those for other staples like Emperor of Bones, those kind of things. Faithful Mending, definitely not a great card.
Yeah.
Easy one to pitch.
Yeah, it's very good at pitching because it pitches both Solitude and Force Negation.
Yeah,
in this deck. And then having flashback cards with your Ketramos is nice. Just exile itself.
Not too bad. Some of the other additions I've been seeing in these lists for the white card to be able to pitch. Wow, did we just pitch a Gristle Daddy?
Yeah. Meticulous Archive hit the Gristle brand off the Surveil. That's always what you want to see. And Dean actually does have a 2-drop Philia.
But has a Spell Snare from James, it looks like.
Well, the Philia resolved.
What?
So James is saying, I don't care about Philia. Wants to save that Spell Snare for something better.
All right. The discipline to save a Spell Snare when you only have 1 mana available and your opponent casts a 2-drop. If Overlord gets cast now, all of a sudden James is like, well, mistakes were made.
But if you Spell Snare and Dean has an Emperor of Bones and tags that Gristlebrand in the graveyard, then you also feel bad.
All right.
Oh, wow, but Dean instead has the one you can't Spell Snare, the Singleton Boggart Trawler.
Yeah, what about Bajuka Bog over and over and over again here?
Philia going to come in and exile the Boggart Trawler. No value gained with re-triggering it, but we'll get a counter on the Philia to increase his clock. Okay, back to Mangus. Now no graveyard, so the Gristlebrand not available to be reanimated. Just has a Marsh Flats and a pass back to Dean.
If I was James, I'd be like, do you actually mind if I do Spell Snare that? I know it's been a turn and a half, but...
Do we get takesies backsies?
It has now worked out poorly for me, so can I switch that up?
Okay, Philia and Boggart Trawler come in. No exile from the Philia, so 6 damage comes across. Mangus drops to 11.
Solid 2-turn clock starting next turn for Dean, so this is a real problem for sure. James is going to have to start doing some stuff.
Yeah, Dean sacrifices Marsh Flats, drops himself to 16. Now has 4 mana available. Let's see what he can do here. Mangus has nothing going on the battlefield or in the graveyard, but he can go from nothing to everything very quickly. And end of turn, Tainted Indulgence, discard an Atraxa, untap with a Goryos, ephemerate it.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have 14 cards in hand. You've attacked your opponent for 7, gained 7 life, and everything looks fine.
And I did see double Force, double Tainted Indulgence, land, and that Spell Snare in hand for James.
And here's Overlord of the Baelmerk.
Post-combat?
Yeah, I could have cast that one for his main phase, right?
Yeah, and then blinked it out with Philia.
Finds 2 Emperor of Bones, Philia Solitude, chooses to return an Emperor of Bones. but only left himself 1 mana. I think he fetched for a Shadowy Backstreet to start. Now can't cast that Emperor of Bones.
Yeah, Emperor of Bones not that amazing right now. As you're not hitting anything from the graveyard, but this feels like the turn for James. Feels like you really have to do something absolutely right now. But the problem is if Dean did that play in the other order, next turn, James would have 100% had to do something because it would have just been a lethal attack coming back at you. So maybe a little minor mistake there from Dean.
Mangus, fetch for a Surveil Land and then responds to the trigger with Tainted Indulgence.
Yep.
This is a very common play pattern because you don't want to accidentally draw into the Surveil Land with the Tainted Indulgence, and you still get to see the same number of cards.
Checks out. There's a Traxa in hand.
So that must have been the draw for turn, because otherwise it would have certainly been discard.
Yep, absolutely.
Although, but if he didn't have the answer to the Philia yet, maybe not, because then Dean can always blink the Boggart Trawler.
So it looks like there's another Tainted Indulgence, but do we actually have... Okay, 4 types. Sometimes the extra ability on Tainted Indulgence is only a detriment.
Yeah, just 1, 2, 3, and 0.
Yep.
Okay, so Prismatic Ending takes out the Philia for Mangus and then passes back to Dean's. Not just the Trawler to contend with. Mangus has a little bit of breathing room at 10 life. The Overlord of the Baelmark is ticking down and impending, hanging over this game like the sword of Damocles.
I agree. Is that a new Final Fantasy card?
It is not.
Okay, good.
I know nothing about Final Fantasy, but I know a lot of things about Greek mythology. Can we go back to Theros, please? Okay, this is going to be a hasted Philia from the Arena of Glory.
Yeah, that makes sense to deal with that one.
That will meet the Spell Snare from Mangus, but now still has the red floating. Now we get a hasty Emperor of Bones, which Mangus did know about.
Did know about it, yep. So the hasted Bones...
Yeah, Bones trigger will exile Solitude from Dean's own graveyard. So now Emperor and Trawler will come across for 5. Mangus down to 5, facing lethal next turn.
So here's the turn. We know we have Tainted Indulgence. We know we have the ability to put Atraxa into the yard. Now we need to find Goryo's Vengeance. And then when you find Goryo's Vengeance, Atraxa's very good at finding land 5. And then you just need an Ephemerate on your top 10 cards.
I think it was just 2 lands off the
Indulgence. I think it was 2 land. Found the Ephemerate already, but not enough. That is the biggest problem with this Goryo deck is, sure, the deck looks awesome. You get to play a lot of good cards, but at the end of the day, you need one of your 4 cards, your 4 namesake cards of Goryo's Vengeance. And if you don't have it, the deck looks a lot less impressive.
It's another Tainted Indulgence.
Yeah, this game is over as it's just Griselbrand, Atraxa, 2 lands, and an Ephemerate in hand. So absolutely nothing to do. Yep, Solitude or, of course, Goryo's early. And that is the one thing why I've seen some of these Esper Goryo's decks play instead of, 2 it looks like Faithful Mending in that slot. 2 Late for Dinner, I believe it's called.
It is.
The 4 mana Zombify where you get a food, but it also pitches to Solitude. That's looked pretty nice as just Goryo's Vengeance, 5 and 6.
Yeah, increase the deck's consistency. So Dean Forsheed didn't really need that much disruption. His opponent hits the fail rate that all combo decks have in game 1. Now he finds himself up a game, is going to be able to reach to his sideboard and see what disruption he has there. What's going on the sideboard for Dean Forsheed, Corey?
All right, so for Dean, not a ton. You would really love to see like a bunch of relics, like 3 relics or so. We have 1 relic. There's 2 Thoughtseizes, which I love. 2 Wear and Tear, I'm not a fan of. 2 Obstinate Char, Maz, and no. You could think about Magus of the Moon. The Esper mana base is actually a little greedy sometimes, and the only disadvantage you have there is Solitude is still going to be left in from the other side, but you could bring that in as a cheeky one-of. Outside of that, nothing else that's very good except 1 Celestial Purge if you want to try to answer one of these reanimate targets on a just straight removal basis, which is normally not the way you want to do it. But looking at the deck list here from Dean, we have 3 Fatal Push, 3 Prismatic Endings I already need to get out of my deck, so you might just have to bring that one in out of necessity.
Yeah. Celestial Purge can hit Psychic Frog and can hit Emperor of Bones.
Yeah, so that one is actually probably perfectly fine. And if you ever hit Griselbrand, or Atraxa is probably a better example, in response to Ephemerate, you still feel like you got away with that at least a little bit.
Yeah. Moving over to James Mangus's sideboard, he has 4 Consigned to Memory, 1 Force of Negation, 2 Worms Chant, 1 Pest Control, 2 Teferi Time Raveler, 3 Thoughtseize, and 2 Wrath of the Skies. What do you like there?
I really like the Teferis here. They look really solid to me, especially when you're on the play. That is a card that just gets better. Outside of that, not in love with everything. You could also bring in some Thoughtseize. I think this is also a product of how many cards you want to be taking out. So Thoughtseize and Teferi are kind of the slam dunks for me. Everything else looks just okay.
Okay. Well, as our players finish shuffling up for Game 2, let's shout out our sponsors, starting with Ultimate Guard, the industry leader in gaming supplies. From the Katana sleeves to the Boulder deck box, check your local game store for Ultimate Guard supplies today. We're also sponsored by SpiceRack.gg, our partner running tournament software, and a great source for deck lists and tournaments for players and organizers alike. Once Upon a Galaxy, the new Auto Battler, a great sponsor of ours as well. Assemble a crew as you sail across a diverse and spectacular galaxy of your favorite storybook characters, legends of myth, and other cosmic entities. And then, of course, Mox Field. They host all of our deck lists via Spice Rack, and it is an excellent tool for players to host their own deck lists and share with friends and teammates. Okay, looks like the action is underway here in Game 2. Go down and check it out. A couple tap lands to start. Both players liking their top cards with the Surveils.
Rumor has it we're also sponsored by Ross Merriam's Wallet. Type Ross in the chat and he'll send you $20.
I just don't even know what to say.
I'm just reading the plugs here that we're given here, so I'm sorry, just doing my job here, buddy.
I will send you 20 Turkish lira.
I'll take it. All right, not too amazing of a hand here, and I am a little shocked that we have, 3 of the cards out of the 6 that I would think we needed to get out.
Yeah, a couple
of our deck,
endings
as well as a Fatal Push there.
Yeah, Fatal Push up top with this Thoughtseize. It's going to take a Ketramos, leave the 3 removal spells, Emperor of Bones, and Boggart Trawler in hand for Dean Forshee. That is not a very strong hand in this matchup.
Dean will not be losing to a Psychic Frog, though. That is for sure. But yeah, the rest of the deck, the over-the-top aspect from the Esper Goryo deck, is still going to be a big problem. And oh, yes.
Dean goes for the turn 2 Emperor of Bones that Mangus left him with, but he was ready with this Spell Snare. Fetches up Water Grave, dropping to 15 life, but now answers both of the key threats that were in Dean's hand, and he really has nothing going at this point.
Yeah, this time, the last Spell Snare, didn't get cast, being a little patient, and it could have been absolutely detrimental to James. So this time, let's cast that one immediately.
Arena of Glory, the turn 3 land drop for Dean Forshee, but kind of wants to play this Boggart Trawler to establish pressure, but there's nothing juicy in the graveyard to exile.
Yeah, that's why I really don't love leaving these cards in, especially when James has the ability to take a peek at the hand and then just dance around these removal spells. Like, this is just going to be a game that if James has any assortment of the normal, traditional Esper Goryo draw, it's just going to be very trivial for him to clean this one up.
Yeah, and he can do it at his leisure. He's under no pressure.
Yeah.
If he needs to, cast a Psychic Frog and draw some cards, if he needs to cast a Faithful Mending, Tainted Indulgence to fix his hand, he has plenty of time to do all of that.
Yeah, I feel like Frog is the only one that, Dean has kind of locked up, and I might have even saw one in James's hand. So, there is that going.
Okay, here's Ophelia on the end step for Dean, so that will be a little bit of pressure and allows him to cast the Boggart Trawler for even more pressure.
Yeah.
With the ability to reuse that trigger later.
Okay, not so bad. And, of course, now we're one Overlord of the Baelmerk away from just having a dominant position. That's just how great that combo is.
So Boggart Trawler is the play, then Philia will come in, blink the Trawler just like last game so we can get a counter. Mangus will drop to 12 from the Philia attack, and he's staring down a 2-turn clock. He's at 12 life. Dean has 6 power. So all that time in the world has shrunk now to 2 turns of time in the world.
That's a good dog.
They're all good dogs, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun fact, did you know that's actually the likeness of Michael Majors' dog? Michael Majors has a very adorable dog.
Okay, Mangus fetches with Polluted Delta on the end step. That looks like a meticulous archive, but maybe that's
Tainted Indulgence here.
might be an Undercity Sewers, but it's a Surveil land.
Yeah. Oh, which one? The top left?
The bottom one
Oh, okay.
that you just fetched for.
Yeah, not 100%. Does look like a sewer.
Yeah, I think it's Undercity Sewers. We already had the archive.
I gotta say that this is one of the decks that utilizes the Surveil lands better than any other deck.
Yeah. Once again, Mangus going for the fetch my Surveil land, hold priority with the trigger on the stack, Tainted Indulgence in response.
Yep.
Love that sequencing.
That is the way to do it. You know, James has been around the block here for a bit. So the one thing that James has going on, you know, you do have Psychic Frog with an Ephemerate, so you can kind of dance around some removal spells, but when your opponent has 3, it's still not a safe frog. So James has to be finding something else, and looks like we just have a Spell Snare. I want to say a Solitude, which looks great here.
So can Solitude in combat deal with that Philia, potentially even block the...
I think we're going to Solitude right now, actually.
Dreams of Steel and Oil cast for Dean Forshee, so that'll force Mangus's hand. Solitude, exile Philia, and the good news for Mangus is that there's 3 removal spells in hand for Forshee. None of them hit Solitude.
Well, we might get a couple treasures. We could pending one of them. Yeah, Solitude here. I mean, it would have been better for James, you know, if this Dreams of Steel and Oil wasn't around to go to combat in response to targeting the trawler. You know, you can Solitude the trawler and then block the Philia. That would be perfectly reasonable. But when your hand is forced here, this is still a perfectly fine exchange.
Yeah, so Psychic Frog taken with the Dreams of Steel and Oil, Ephemerate and Spell Snare, the leftovers for Mangus. And now he's back to having all the time in the world.
Yeah.
Doesn't have anything towards the combo at all, but he has plenty of time. And Forshee is on empty besides those 3 removal spells that have been rotting in his hand all game.
I do love that attack. And we are starting to get close to the territory for James where, yeah, you know, James is flooding out. His draw has been less than exciting. But, you know, with the one hedge maze that these lists usually play, you can just hardcast Atraxa pretty easily.
Yeah. Just Hallowed found the draw from Mangus, and then we go back to Dean. Unclear what he's drawn. He does have that Arena Glory available, so any big creature he draws can be given haste.
Yeah.
But right now, it's Mangus who's actually making headway.
Yeah, Treading Water. Overlord always has to be one of the better draws in this deck.
Yep. And there's already an Emperor in the graveyard, so even if he completely bricks, he's got something.
Yeah.
Mills over 2 Ragavans, Solitude, and Celestial Purge. See which of these creatures he wants to bring back. He knows there's a Spell Snare in hand for Mangus, so probably not the Emperor of Bones.
Yeah.
And he also knows there's an Ephemerate, so it's hard to get the Solitude and go after Mangus' Solitude.
Yeah, and Ketchermos is also a little difficult because that will get exiled. So the Ephemerate does do some solid work here, and I feel like Dean basically can never put a second creature into play, otherwise you get that Ephemerate loop going. So, ooh, another Solitude off the top was a nice one.
Yes, this might just be a fair game for Mangus.
Yes.
No Goryo's Vengeance needed. We'll just kill your creatures and Solitude you to death.
Yeah, usually any kind of fair game win strategy from James includes Psychic Frog, you know what I mean? And it's borderline not fair anyways, you know?
Okay, here's the hardcast Solitude going after this Boggart Trawler. That'll bring Forshee back up to 20, but then he's staring down 6 damage a turn. And there's still a mana available for Mangus, who has the Ephemerate up. No window for Forshee to evoke his own Solitude and exile one of Mangus's.
There's Goryo's, but nothing to do with it yet.
Yeah, he surveilled the Goryos into his graveyard earlier. He's off that plan.
Yep.
See what force you can draw. That's just a land. It's a Blood Crypt, but she shocks in.
I believe you can just hardcast Solitude now, right? That looks pretty okay. Max okay.
That will just trade for the Ephemerate.
Yeah. That it will. But what else are you going to do? And hey, maybe there's a second Solitude under here, and you can get rid of one of those, but...
So Mangus says, ephemerate my Solitude. In fact, exile your Solitude.
Yep.
You go up to 15, take 3, go back down to 12. Mangus gains 3 up to 19.
And we must be out of Surveil lands. Look like we have 3 that have been played already.
Yeah. I think that's the Hedge Maze still in the deck.
Yeah, looks like there is 4. I think the Hedge Maze is the second one there next to Hollowed Fountain. But okay, so I would have really liked to see James do that proactively because we do have Goryos. You can't get lucky if you don't put yourself in the situation to flip over a Goryos here.
If he's already attacked, then you might as well try to wait and Goryo's on.
I know, but I'm saying before you attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have just liked to see that as a proactive element because, well, if it's Gristlebrand, even if you know about the Solitude on the other side, you still had an Ephemerate at that point, you know?
Yeah.
And could have, Goryos back at Ketramos. Maybe that's not the best way to do it, but...
And there's, looks like at least 5 cards in exile. Getting close to that 7 mark.
Yeah.
Here's a Thoughtseize off the top from Mangus, and Forshi says shows him a Solitude he drew. So
okay.
now that'll even up the battlefields. Solitude will exile one of Mangus' Solitudes.
You can bring back a Ketramos in response to what? Draw yourself a card, right?
Looks like that's what Mangus is doing because there were some other cards in exile underneath. So he has the 7. This is Ketramos can attack.
Yep. So exiled, you get to draw a card.
Gain 3 life, but then lose 1 and draw 1. So up to 21 from the gain 3. Should go down to 20 from the Ketramos trigger.
And now Ketramos looks like it's ready to go. Yeah, there's 8 cards, so you get 1 attack in, but then you are going to lose it. It doesn't trigger off itself when it exiles to Goryos, right?
Let's read. Yeah, it should.
Okay. Not bad. I mean, yeah, then 2 mana Goryos, gain 4, you take 4.
Oh, and and we have to resolve the Thoughtseize.
Yeah,
it should go to 18, 2 more from the Thoughtseize lost. Now the Ketramos attacks, that'll be 4 damage and 4 life for Mangus. And
we didn't draw a card, so it either doesn't work that way or James doesn't know it works that way, and I'm uncertain.
That should be the, it should see itself.
I would think so as well, but
because it doesn't
not
say
100%.
other cards.
But it is something you have to catch, right? Not anything we'd be stopping our players for.
It's just the trigger.
So just Spell Snare and a land in hand. And that was the cost from James, like only drawing 1 card there off Goryos. Like, it's not amazing because if you do finally surveil or discard one of your big creatures, but we're at the stage where you can just cast them at this point.
Yeah, so he's just looking to draw Atraxa naturally.
Yeah.
No. Both players have a Solitude, so the boards are even, but Forshi has that Overlord of the Belmerk. So in a couple turns, that'll start attacking, and he can take over this game very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like Arena's getting exerted. We cooking. Probably a 2-drop heading to the graveyard.
Feel ya, that'll meet the Spell Snare.
Yep.
Prismatic Ending, Fatal Push, they were in the opening hand, still there for Dean Forshi.
This is my shocked face.
There's a Marsh Flats, I think was the
Marsh
pickup.
Flats and a land, so just 2 bricks, drawing nothing off the top here.
Yeah, Godless Shrine, Marsh Flats in hand.
Yep.
Has 1 more turn before the Overlord starts attacking.
Has used all the 4 surveils, but you can still thin the deck a little bit. But yeah, James is drawing quite horrifically.
What is coming for Dean here?
Deep in the tank. Overlord's here.
Okay, no play, so Overlord will come off impending. It is now a creature.
I think I would have liked to see Dean attack, try to offer the trade. I mean, I guess you just don't block and then you just re-attack back and we're not really accomplishing anything. But if James were to just draw an Ephemerate now, being able to clean up the Overlord feels a little brutal, but probably unavoidable at this point.
Yeah. And if Mangus decides not to trade, then he can't attack back. Right?
Yeah.
The Overlord is there as a blocker.
Yep, very true.
So you just get a free attack.
Yeah, I would have liked that. But Magic's hard.
Okay. Any good draw steps coming for James Mangus?
Is that Tainted Indulgence? That's got to be just draw 2 at this point.
But okay, we're counting.
Oh no. Okay. I mean, regardless, you had the extra land. I think we top decked Ephemerate and Solitude.
I definitely saw Solitude.
Yeah.
See the other one.
I think we saw Ephemerate. I guess I'm not sure. Regardless, Solitude is an absolutely amazing draw.
Yeah. Hits the
It is Ephemerate.
Overlord, so Dean gains 5 up to 11, it looks like. Then attack with the other Solitude, Dean decides to trade. So both players will gain 3, Mangus up to 24, Forshi up to 15. And gain 5 up to 12.
Still going to be a long game, but I think big advantage to the player who plays 8 drops and 7 drops.
Yeah, definitely has the juiciest top decks. He also has more bricks, but he really only needs one great top deck, and then this game is over.
Yeah. And that's a little brutal there, as you really do have to fire that off. You do not want Regavan to hit a Solitude or some other banger off James's deck. So using the Ephemerate here, it's okay, but you're not getting any value off its second chapter.
Yeah. So top deck Ragavan trades with the Ephemerate, essentially.
Uh-oh.
Now the Solitude can start coming in. Dean gained 2 up to 17 from the other Solitude on the Ragavan. Now falls to 14 from that Solitude attack.
It's a Psychic Frog, the only thing Dean has had locked down since turn 1.
Yeah, might as well keep that in hand for now. May find a bunch of Thought Seizes.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, back to Dean. What does he have? There's an Overlord of the Bailmark. That is excellent.
Wow, that is so good. And it's Arena of Gloried here.
Okay, so first mill is 2 lands, Ketramos, Emperor of Bones.
Oh my goodness.
Decides to take Emperor of Bones.
That was an absolutely amazing draw.
Has a Plains as his other card. Oh, looks like that. See it. Okay. Exiles a Solitude from Mangus's graveyard with the Emperor of Bones. And just attacks with the Overlord. That mills over Solitude, Detective's Phoenix, and a couple lands.
Okay, the one of Detective Phoenix looks very interesting here.
Dean takes a Solitude, and we know he has a Prismatic Ending to cast that one for Evoke.
That is very true.
Now it has to come here, I think. And it is Atraxa!
It is. Okay. We're cooking. One good draw deserves another, but we'll see if it's too late.
Yeah, it doesn't have that Ephemerate that was hanging around a couple turns ago. So Dean will likely want to Solitude this with the Atraxa trigger on the stack.
Yep.
He does. That'll bring Mangus up to 27. But now we resolve the Atraxa trigger. 10 cards coming.
Still no creature in yard, so land Goryos or something isn't on the table. So we really do need to deal with Overlord. So,
Okay. Well, thoughts. There's a couple of Atraxas, Ephemerate. There's a Prismatic Ending, a Thoughtseize, a Tainted Indulgence. So no removal.
well, the Ephemerate is a removal spell.
Oh yeah, yep, there's a Solitude.
So you get to gain life too. And you can clear out the Emperor of Bones, I don't know, in Magical Christmas Land next turn, but the Emperor of Bones on Solitude will clean that up. But
So this is Ephemerate, Prismatic Ending, so we can handle the Emperor of Bones later, Flooded Strand as the land, and Atraxa are the choices for James Mangus.
looks great.
So he can exile the Overlord, put Dean back to 20. But then Dean will have a turn with the Emperor of Bones. I don't know if there. I think there's an Overlord in the graveyard that got milled by a previous one.
Almost assuredly. There's the Detective as well, but no Overlord.
No Overlord, okay.
They've been all exiled already, it would seem. But I feel like you can't really wait. I mean, I feel like you can't wait. You have to hit. You have to Ephemerate now, otherwise Emperor adapting is just something you can do in response. So, if that's the case, you have to do it now, and I think you still just have to hit Overlord. Overlord gets back too much juicy stuff. It's tempting to be able to hit the Emperor, but I don't think you can do it here.
Yeah, might as well attack first.
Oh, yeah. It's been a great match.
Incredible game, too. All right, Dean going to take this, so he'll drop to 12. Mangus up to 30.
And this has got to be like Ephemerate number 3, at least.
Okay, so Ephemerate, and that's available to rebound next turn to deal with the Emperor of Bones if Mangus wants to do that.
Yeah, but this Solitude's going to eat it in response, I would imagine.
Yeah. Or does Forshi want to get something that's more going to generate him card advantage as opposed to deny Mangus cards because he knows way more cards are coming.
Yeah.
From the attraction.
Dean's best draw is Thoughtseize, and it's not close. That would just be phenomenal. Thoughtseize the Atraxa, bring it back, start cooking. Is there any other big creature you can hit? Ketramos or something like that? Not great.
Yeah, there is a Ketramos, but as you said, not going to be an awesome draw. Philia the play, but can't haste it because the Arena of Glory is still tapped from
You
Exert
can with
last turn.
Detective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has the Phoenix.
But what does that truly do besides getting some extra damage in? That seems like
You
it.
can put the Solitude in with Emperor and then blink it and keep it around.
Okay. That's not nothing. It is not going to get that double, removal style of effect, but just having an extra 3/2 around, always welcome.
Okay, so Detective Phoenix collecting some evidence to bestow from the graveyard. Now Emperor of Bones adapts, puts in the Solitude, exiles Mangus' Solitude. He'll go to 33. The Emperor of Bones should have a couple counters on it. This is a...
And it can still do some chomping, right? So maybe we missed more cards to be chomped from the yard every beginning of combat.
Yeah, and I guess Forshi doesn't want to blink anything with the Philia.
I think I would have blinked the Emperor of the Bones, reset it.
Yeah. So this will be an attack for 11. That'll drop Mangus to 22. And then it'll be 3 life gain for Forshi.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to blink that Solitude. It comes back for James. That would have been no good.
There's too many Solitudes.
Too many Solitudes.
Okay, yeah, so definitely didn't want to blink that one. But yeah, you said you could have blinked the Emperor of Bones, reset it.
Yeah.
To be able to reanimate something next turn.
Because the 4 damage isn't that relevant here. Now, the Prismatic Ending is probably going to clean it up as well. But, step 1's Atraxa and go from there.
Yeah, looks like we have life totals after everything settles at 24-19 in favor of Mangus.
I believe I just spotted another Ephemerate. Maybe it was another Prismatic Ending. Yeah, another Prismatic. Also pretty solid. James does have the ability to just go pending the 2 creatures and say go with his opponent left with just Fatal Push and then Atraxa later. Now, of course, you do run the foul of, well, Atraxa's in your hand and your opponent's playing a Thoughtseize deck, but...
Yeah. I think if he has enough mana to pending once with the Atraxa, which he does, he has 9 lands.
Yeah.
Then I think you got to go for it. If you didn't, then he might not want to lose this Atraxa to Solitude.
Yes. Yeah, I think as long as you can get rid of the good dog here, I think that's the more important one.
Yeah. But if you can exile either one, you stop Dean from rebuying a Solitude. Okay, so I see Goryo's Vengeance, 2 Tainted Indulgence under instant, couple Psychic Frog and Emperor of Bones.
I don't think you can bring back a Solitude with how it works, right?
Well, if Forshi had... Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he didn't reset.
If you reset, then yeah, absolutely, but...
Okay, so we got Teferi coming, Solitude. Looks like a Prismatic Ending? Another one?
Looks like a third
Goryos.
pending and a Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize not going to be that amazing. Probably just... Wait, kind of pending and Thoughtseize. No, it's a Goryos. Okay,
yeah.
all right.
So his instant sorcery creature, Planeswalker.
Okay.
So does pending the Philia. That'll leave the Detective's Phoenix around.
And Teferi's here to hang out. So things very much swaying in James's favor. This is a big draw step. If Dean doesn't have anything here, I think we have full control back in Esper Goryos. And yeah, we've been talking about how amazing this game is. They'd have to play a third one, you know? Oh.
Flage off the top. He has the Arena available. He can Flage, then Arena from the graveyard. That can deal with the Atraxa, but there is a Solitude.
Yep. I suppose, yeah, you want to do that before the escape comes back. But, yeah, could have dealt 9 damage to Atraxa there.
Pitches the Prismatic Ending to evoke Solitude. Does Mangus. That ends the threat of Flage. Does give Forshi a bunch of life.
Oh, I think that was an attack, just like, you know, I am just going to attack autopilot mode, and I don't know if James was like, yeah, you can take it back, but I'll block.
Yeah, block.
Either way, Dean was like, we better get to the third game, give ourselves a little bit of time.
Yeah, Teferi is going to be able to rebuy that Atraxa.
Oof.
Mangus was taking over that game very quickly.
I don't know if I'm more jealous of Teferi rebuying Atraxa or James's shirt. It's close.
It's the shirt.
Oh, God, it's the shirt. You're right.
Okay, so players going to go back to their sideboards, see if they have anything and they want to change. Got to expect Dean maybe to bring out some of those removal spells.
As I was saying before that game, I don't want those removal spells in my hand because, well, they do answer Frog. That's important, and it's more important on the draw. But now, since we're going to be on the play, I really want to see a little bit more proactiveness here from Dean. But all that being said, Dean's sideboard does not really, you know, allow you to bring in too many cards with how it's configured. It's much more guided towards, I would say, Boros Energy, as well as Is It Prowess? You know, I would think Dean is slapping up that matchup left and right, but it is missing some cards for this kind of matchup, for sure.
So maybe the pushes stay in. They're a little bit better against Emperor of Bones. The Prismatic End is a little bit better against Ketramos. So there's strengths and weaknesses to either if you just want to keep in one.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I just would for sure want to trim some of them. And I don't think we saw him reach for the sideboard at all, so I think we left him in.
Okay, well, the one thing he will be looking for in this opening hand on the play is a Ragavan.
Yes. Ragavan's great here because there is only the 3 ways to deal with it at a 1-for-1 rate from James. Otherwise, you just have to do the Solitude, you know, 2-for-1 yourself. But, you know, desperate times will call for desperate measures, as Ragavan is still very good against Esper Goryos.
Mangus can afford to give up some card advantage early. Atraxa will make up for all of that later on.
Exactly. The great equalizer, Atraxa.
Yes. I mean, we saw it that game. He was almost dead to that Overlord. Ripped the Atraxa right in time, and it turned things around real fast.
And the one thing I will say about James's draws so far, both have been very lackluster. This deck has a much higher ceiling than we've seen. So, you know, if James had the nut draw at any point, and I mean, not even the nut draw of like flip over Gristlebrand and bring it back on turn 2, like that's a little excessive. Just a traditional turn 2, draw some cards, discard your big threat, turn 3, bring it back, and then ephemerate it. That draw is almost unbeatable from a lot of different mid-range strategies.
Well, he didn't find it there. Mangus sent his first hand back. He's taking a mulligan to 6. Gonna try to find it on the second try.
Take 2.
Orshi keeping 7 on the play, so he liked his opener.
Well, they're taking a second try. Big shout out to Ross's wallet again. Type Ross in chat. It's up to $25 now. Is that true, or?
Again, not bucks, in Turkish lira.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm practicing my plugs here.
It's actually, and it's 100,000 Turkish lira.
Okay, is that like a penny or?
About.
Okay, cool. All right, that's big game. But I think I do see the Prismatic Ending on the other side as well as a Thoughtseize.
Fetches up the Sacred Foundry for that turn 1 Ragavan, so force you down to 17. Mangus likely going to join him there with a Marsh Flats.
That's a big deal. There, because I saw 2 Thoughtseizes in hand from James, and Thoughtseize on 1 is great when you're on the play, but when you're on the draw staring at a Ragavan and you start Thoughtseizing your opponent, you feel quite bad. But now if James is able to go land 2, double Thoughtseize, something like that would be great.
Yeah, gets a Godless Shrine with that Marsh Flats. Both players at 17, and the board is clear exactly how Mangus wants it. Ooh, the 1 Relic in Forshi's sideboard.
But also the 1 land.
Yeah, and that makes Relic all the harder to use.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or it makes it really easy to draw a card immediately. But hey, the one thing I will say is when you keep a hand, you know, that is a 1-lander, you probably have some good stuff here, and Thoughtseize doesn't wreck you as hard.
Okay, so Thoughtseize revealing 2 Philias, Overlord of the Baelmark, Prismatic Ending, and Celestial Purge.
Yeah, this is going to look a little similar to last game where James gets to take one of the unique non-removal cards and just dance around them. So, I mean, I would imagine there's zero chance that an Overlord is going to be in Dean's hand when we go back to Dean as we have another Thoughtseize. It's a little awkward now because, well, hitting one of these failures is just okay. As the other one's going to run free.
When you have two Thoughtseize, that's the time you think about taking the pair. But in this case, Overlord can rebuy one of them and reassemble the full combo. So you still just have to leave Dean with Ophelia.
And Overlord in this deck is just like, you know, the fabled mirror breaker of these mid-range style decks. It's just the best card. You got to deal with it.
Okay, so Mangus getting a swamp with the other fetch, wants to preserve a little bit of his life total because he has double Thoughtseize as well. He goes to 12. No second land coming for Dean. Now Mangus fetches to 11.
Purge that.
Yeah, has a Teferi Time Raveler.
I mean, Teferi was already just an absolutely incredible play up against the good dog, as, you know, there's no real good way that Dean gets away from that. But Teferi is just looks incredible here in this situation.
Dean does pop the relic, trying to dig for his second land, so that is no longer a concern for Mangus. And with Teferi, he doesn't have a lot of other concerns either.
Yeah, now having to main phase Thalia, like, feels quite bad. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, Arena of Glory, but can't exert and cast Ophelia.
That's true. So it's not even that good to exert it, to be honest, but...
So just plays the Ophelia main phase because he can't play it at instant speed with the Teferi. Mangus going to bounce the Ophelia and now has another Thoughtseize.
Now James is cooking.
Okay, there's a Thoughtseize revealed in Forshi's hand, but it has no black mana. It's Thoughtseize, those two white removal spells we knew about, Plains and Ophelia that was just bounced.
Yeah. He still might take Thoughtseize here. The Ophelia is not amazing. It looks like Tainted Indulgence. Another Thoughtseize, I think, from James. Maybe not.
Well... Probably not a fourth one because he only has 3 in the deck.
Hey, this game would end pretty quickly, I'll tell you that.
So,
the classic, we've been playing fast, but not keeping track of our life totals.
It should be a shock, 3 fetches, and 3 Thoughtseizes. He should be a 9.
Yeah. Which is relevant.
Yeah, higher incentive to take the Ophelia.
Yeah.
I think there's an Emperor of Bones in Mangus's hand, but that gets answered by the removal spells in Forshi's hand.
Yeah, with 2 Tainted Indulgence, I believe, there.
Yeah, still just going to play the Emperor.
I don't love that. Yeah, I would much rather draw some cards there.
And with the Teferi, you know, you can hide behind that and get an activation of the Emperor if you set it up.
You just unlocked 2 spells in Dean's hand here. Now another Thalia would be an incredible draw here, as you'd be able to give it haste and kill the Teferi.
Dean goes for the prismatic ending on the Emperor instead of the Purge.
Well, good choice.
Gets paid off because there's a Ketramos coming from Mangus.
I still don't like that play either. Like, I'd rather be Tainted Indulgencing here instead of leaning into the removal spells. Like, now you get Thoughtseize, you get one of those cards taken, and you lose your Ketramos. And that's just a solid turn for Dean.
Yeah, Forshi finding his black source of mana here with the Marsh Flats off the top. Has the Purge lined up for the Ketramos. Has a Thoughtseize to take one of the Indulgences from Mangus's hand, but still has no pressure. And there's the Teferi and another Indulgence behind for Mangus. So still got to feel like he's in a favorable position.
Definitely. Absolutely. But I think he could be really pushing his advantage here by not leaning into these removal spells.
Yeah. He's turning on his opponent's hand.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Thoughtseize the cast after fetching up a Blood Crypt, so Forshi down to 12. A lot of fetch shock and Thoughtseizing in this game for both players, so life totals are already quite low, despite I don't think there's been a single attack by a creature yet.
Welcome to Modern. Gotta love it.
Okay, back to Mangus. Teferi ticks up to 4. He drew a Polluted Delta for turn, so likely going to keep that in hand to discard to a Tainted Indulgence.
Yeah. Not sure. I think I'd still play these proactively.
Yeah. If you just find Gur's Vengeance creature, you have land 4.
Yeah.
You have everything.
I mean, there's been crazier things. There are cards in your deck, you know, but this looks excellent here.
Yeah, he's under the Teferi protection, so would be a little awkward into a Thoughtseize deck.
Yep.
Found a spell snare.
And a froggy.
Frog, okay. And you've run the removal spells out of Froggie's hands, so now the frog is free to roam.
Just like we've been saying all game, James really needs to, unlock Dean's hand to be able to top deck a frog late game and absolutely dominate with it.
Yeah. Only the one blue source for Mangus, so he takes down the spell snare to play this frog.
And it's a cost.
Yeah, Force Sheaf punishes with Emperor of Bones. Don't think there's anything juicy in the graveyard, though. All the permanents have been exiled from the battlefield, and the graveyards earlier got exiled by Relic, so...
Yeah, but there was absolutely nothing, right? Okay. You could have gave it haste and adapted it anyways and attacked.
Yeah.
I don't know how great that is, but...
Mangus uses the Teferi to bounce back the Emperor of Bones, and now has the Spell Snare up for the recast. Gets in with Frog, draws another card. He's found a Solitude, a couple other things, and he looks to be very far ahead. Once again... winning without Goryo's Vengeance.
Yep.
He hasn't cast one.
No.
He cast one on a Ketramos.
On a Ketramos, yeah. He hasn't cast a real one yet.
Yeah.
But now this is the big turn for Dean. If Dean cannot do something with substance, James is just going to be able to completely control this game. All right. A hasty creature. Let's see if it falls under Spell Snare, which I believe it's a good dog. Ooh. I want to say the other card is... Ophelia.
It is, but...
So that has haste.
That can potentially take out the Teferi, but at this point, Teferi has done its job.
Yeah,
It's drawn 2 cards.
Oh, yeah. Now, is it worth it to protect? I think I would agree no, but...
Yeah.
Now a Hellbent player up against James with 5 good spells in hand.
Yeah, as the Ketramos, which goes off with Psychic Frog.
Now if I'm James, I'm just like, all right, it is time to try to close this game as fast as possible. And yeah, with Ketramos and Frog, you could go to time right now and still probably be able to do it by using a lot of your resources, but...
So, Tainted Indulgence, the first play for Mangus. Finds Emperor of Bones in a swamp, I believe.
No, Goryos. That was a Goryo. So you can put a Ketramos into the yard, and then during your end step, during Dean's end step, you can Goryos it back, and then there's 2 Ephemerates as well. You can Ephemerate to keep it around, but just gets rid of it instead.
He knows what he's about, and it's not Goryo's Vengeance.
Yeah, yeah. That's the distraction.
I feel you're going to come in and blink the frog again. Mangus down to 7, but doesn't really feel any threat to his life total.
No, a Flage is really the card that I think could maybe do some work.
Finds a Spell Snare off the top.
Now it's time for old Ketramos. Now I bet James is just going to have the need to just give this frog flying multiple turns, multiple times. You got to get a little, you got to be a little wary here, as you don't want to get yourself too low, because remember, this is not open deck list, so we know there's not a lot of lightning bolts here in the deck. They are fatal pushes instead, but James doesn't know that. Yeah. So going to 6 is always a sketchy point in Modern in general.
Well, draws a card off Ketramos by activating the frog, comes across with the frog, draws another one. Mangus with a pretty full grip here. And once the Ketramos starts attacking, on the game's base.
The dog is going to flicker this out, though.
Oh, Prismatic Ending on the Ketramos, along with a dashed Ragavan.
Ooh, we have multiple Ephemerates.
But lets it go.
Yeah, that's probably pretty good.
Instead, going to Solitude pitching Ephemerate. And then plus show the second one. So Dean going to gain 4 life from these 2 creatures being exiled, go up to 13. But with Frog and Solitude attacking, things should end pretty quickly. That's a Gristlebrand and a Goryo's.
Oh, there we go! We finally did the thing.
Yeah. Can't draw cards with the Gristlebrand, but...
I mean, you can after damage if that was going to exist, but wow, what a nice match here from these 2 players. That was an incredible one to watch.
We finally got to see the Esper Goryo's deck do its thing. The very last turn. But
to be fair, when it does its thing, the game does end half the time, so yeah, that is really the power of that deck. And I think Esper Goryo is just an extremely powerful, well-positioned deck right now. You know, it really was shadowed by the years of Breach, you know, being just not quite as powerful as that. But, you know, now that deck is gone, Esper Goryo looks like one of the top dogs.
There's a little bit less graveyard hate. There's more, you know, things like High Noon and Deafening Silence in the format for Storm and Belcher. Those the Goryo's deck doesn't really care about. And it gets to play a little bit of a fair game, too. And that's really valuable in the combo mirrors.
It's got to be, like, the best Frog deck, too. You know, I mean, the Esper Ketramos decks, Frogs looks great there, too. But, wow, when you can discard, turn on your Ketramoses, and just discard Gristlebrand to be able to pop off, the card really does it all in that deck.